All right, guys. Our next guest was lucky enough to be cage side this past weekend as he witnessed one of the best fights so far this year in Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier, the man in Hooker's corner, and also the man behind fighters such as Israel Adesanya, Alex Volkanovski, Brad Riddell, Kai Kara France, Shane Young, and many, many others at City Kickboxing. Eugene Bareman himself, straight from Las Vegas. Welcome back to the show. How are you, man? Thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Good, guys. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm in Vegas, just in the confines of my hotel, just chilling.
You look excited to be there, Huge, so we appreciate the time. So let's kick it off, man, because what an incredible fight this past weekend. Dan Hooker against Dustin Poirier. A lot of people saying this could be, one of the fights of the year, if not the fight of the year. Even though Dan didn't get the win, the fans loved it, and it's, definitely raised a stock with a lot of fans who didn't really know much about him. How would you describe the fight and ultimately Dan's performance?
I think it was definitely a fan-friendly fight. It's not. It's a funny old thing. Like, it's not really, as a coach, it's not really something I want to attach myself to. Like, it's not a fight like this. You want to get in and win and as quickly and as efficiently as you can and get out, and that's what you want to be a part of. So it's kind of a catch-22. Like, the consolidation prize of being part of such an action-packed fight is that it raises your profile and gets a lot of attention, but the downside of it is that you probably took a lot of damage in return. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a fan-friendly fight. We didn't get the result, so it's disappointing from my perspective, but at least there's that consolation prize, I guess. I'd rather have a W, but at least it kind of helped Dan's profile out and brought a lot of attention to the fight, so that's good.
Well,
yeah.
Let's break it down from your perspective. I mean, when you watch a fight like that, what's sort of going through your mind as you're witnessing this war play out? Like, I imagine, like you said, that's not really the fight that you guys probably expected, but also in your words, what went wrong for Dan in this one? What didn't sort of work according to plan?
I wouldn't say we didn't expect it. There was an expectation that it could go that way, but obviously we wanted to. Our plan was to avoid it going that way. But look, this fight. The story of this fight is there's a bigger story behind this fight. There's a bigger underlying story behind this fight, and what it basically is the story of how our country has dealt with coronavirus and the story of how America has dealt with the coronavirus. And people are going to be a bit funny, like, oh, how do you relate that back to this? Well, our game plan had to reflect the way that our country dealt with coronavirus. And to that effect, we weren't able to put that game plan, we weren't able to be successful with that game plan. And basically our game plan surrounded around slowing the fight down to a pace that we were going to be more comfortable with, or that we knew we could hang with. And we weren't able to do that. And that's got it. All credit goes to Dustin and his coaching team for their plan and keeping the fight at a pace that was more suited to them and the conditions of their training camp. And that was it, in a nutshell.
Dan was talking to us about the fact that, you guys were obviously in lockdown and he was sort of only able to run hill sprints near his house, not able to go to his gym. And we understand, obviously, Dustin, the gym, there was some reopened gyms. He was able to work with coaching stuff. And I know what you're referring to, the preparation was different. Was it a part of you cautious in agreeing to take this fight with Dan, knowing that these preparations might not be ideal? And ultimately, I mean, Dan put in such a good performance. He lasted all the way to the very end, and he was able to do so well. But does a part of you regret that you guys didn't sort of delay this one?
No, I'll be truthful. I'm never a fan of a short notice fight, especially at this level. I think it's the guys come to me, you know, and I've taken short notice fights with many fighters for the last decade plus. But at this level, I'm definitely not a fan of a short notice fight. It's too high a level. The preparation that has to be done is too thorough, and if you don't have enough time to do it, it doesn't leave you in a good position. Look, we got together as a team, and I might have alluded to this before, but I'm not the sole decision maker in my team. We get together as a team and we decide what to do. Once we decide what to do as a team, then we all get behind it and we go 100% towards that goal. So as a team, we decided to take the fight. We knew, this is the thing, guys, you got to understand. And one of my pet peeves in the sport is when you hear fighters and coaches, and it happens all the time, you'll hear this quite commonly. They'll say, hey, look, I don't want to give excuses. I don't want to provide excuses. And then the very next sentence, they provide 10 excuses why they lost the fight. And I'm not going to go down that track. I don't believe in that. We knew the conditions that we were taking the fight under. We knew the risks. We knew the rewards. We had many team meetings talking about it. We knew exactly the risk of taking this fight, and we decided to take it. We decided to take it because we thought we had a very good chance of winning, and that's the basis of the decision. We would never take the fight for any other reason other than we thought we could win. It doesn't matter how much money it is. If it was even worth substantially more money than it was now, we wouldn't have taken the fight if we didn't think we could win. So we have no excuses. We put together a plan. We put together a plan to slow that fight down, and we weren't able to execute it. And that the blame for that lays on all of us. I'm not gonna heap all the blame on the execution. I'm not gonna heap all the blame on the plan. The plan might, the plan had holes as well when in hindsight. So, that's just how it is. That's just the way the fight played out. Our plan didn't work this time. We rolled the dice. We thought we could win. Dustin and his team had a brilliant plan, brilliant execution. They were able to, they were the kings of the night. They deserve all the glory, and I'm definitely not willing to take any glory away from that victory. Well done to Mike Brown and Dustin Poirier.
So there was no questions about the decision. I know when the judges were calling out the scorecards, there was a bit of a moment where it was like, well, this could really go either way. You were cool with the decision?
Yep. I was happy with the decision. It was 2-2. In my head, it was 2-2. Dustin won the last two. We won the first two. The difficult round was the third. And again, that round had a equal part of stand-up work and an equal part of groundwork. The stand-up part, you can judge, you can kind of judge that, and depending on what you like, you can judge that either way. The ground part, if you look at that traditionally, doesn't matter what Dustin was throwing up or what he was doing. Traditionally, if you look at the way that judging has worked, even up until recently, top guy gets that. Top guy gets that control time. So what I thought, and again, this is all hearsay. This is just speculation. This is just me thinking out loud. I thought if Dan could have held him down for the entire round, so because Dustin managed to get to his feet with about 40 seconds to go, I believe if Dan had been able to hold him down, because he already had the majority of the control top time and the majority of the round to that ends, if he had been able to hold on for that last 40 seconds and not let Dustin up, I believe we could have scraped that round. Maybe it's just hearsay, and that there's a possibility that result might be a little bit different. But to Dustin's credit, he recognised that. He got up in that last 40 seconds, and he probably won that last 40 seconds when they did return to their feet. So it's, when you look back at a fight and it comes down, that's what it comes down to. When you're at this level, it comes down to like little things like that the little technical things he did to stand up, and that little 30-second burst that he had on his feet right at the end of the round, that possibly won him the fight.
It's a great analysis, Coach, and we appreciate you coming on and the honesty of breaking down this fight. People online sort of ripping into the fact that these guys got paid what they did after a performance like that. And I mean, it's an interesting situation because, contracts get signed and amounts of money get agreed upon, but fans can't help but point out that in boxing and many other sports and many other situations, these guys would be making more money and deserve more money after a war like that. I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts when you see the fans sort of not being very happy with the UFC, the way the fighters are being treated, and also a lot of these fighters themselves saying, hey, we're not going to keep fighting until you pay us what we deserve. What's your take on what's happening right now?
Hey, look, no one who's going to look at that fight and say that those guys don't deserve more money.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a person on earth. And that includes, the people in charge of the UFC. If they look at that fight and think that those guys get paid enough to leave that much of their life in the cage, then they're insane. They're insane. Of course, they deserve more money. In Vegas, the amount of money you get paid gets published after the fight, so it's out there. It's on record for everybody to. It's out there for everybody to see. And after a fight like that, like you've damaged yourself for life. That's a fact. Like there's more and more studies coming out now, and there will be more conclusive studies in the future that when you inflict that sort of damage on each other, you're causing permanent injury, and and no amount of money can pay for that. But you got to remember, this is a sport that we choose to do, and we definitely, most fighters feel, and most of the public out there feel, that the fighters should be rewarded more for that sort of, for that level of commitment to each other and to the fans and to the company. I think most fighters are, just the general consensus is right, and that is that the fighters need a greater revenue share of what the company makes, and you can't argue with that. I see in the media, I've seen in the media some of the people in the, well, mainly Dana actually, talk about the NFL and the MLB and the NHL. They're all trying to cut the fighters' salaries in half and stuff. But he's saying that he's not doing that. Well, they're getting 50% revenue share with their company. Like, you can cut their salary in half when they're getting 50%. Look, our guys over here. Look, our guys over here getting 10 and 10. In the NFL and stuff, the guys that collecting the helmets and the towels in the changing room, they're getting paid more than our guys.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
Well, if you think about it, they're probably on your average salary.
Yeah.
Are they getting 10 and 10 for picking up the helmets and towels and dirty sweatshirts and putting them? They're probably getting paid more than what some of the fighters are getting paid, given that obviously the fighters fight more than once. But you understand the ridiculousness of it. I think the question is what all the fighters are asking for. Is it like out of this world? Is it too far fetched to grant them that? And the consensus amongst the fighters and stuff is that it's not. To share a bigger slice of the pie is all they really want.
Yeah. It's funny because when we spoke to Israel last time, we were talking about, hey, you and Paulo Costa, would you ever do The Ultimate Fighter, or you and Darren Till? And he was saying how, nah, he's just not really interested. But then he said, well, everybody has a price. And he's like, they can sort of come talk to me. And now here we go. We've got Joe Rogan saying that Israel's going to be doing TUF with Paulo Costa now. I'm just curious, when exactly did this change?
The Joe Rogan is more on the know than I am, because I don't know anything about it. So
you're not aware of any Ultimate Fighter happening with Israel and Paulo Costa?
100%. 100%. I don't know anything about it. No one's ever proposed it to me. I've never had any documentation. I've never had any electronic documentation like saying anything about it at all. Joe Rogan knows a lot more than me about it. So I don't know. So like, you can take that how you want it, but it probably means that Joe Rogan's source of information is not good.
I know that Paulo Costa tweeted out like him versus Adesanya on Twitter for Ultimate Fighter, but Paulo Costa he does a bit of trolling, puts out a lot of fun stuff. So I always wondered if Joe Rogan just saw that and thought that was official. I mean, do you think there's an Ultimate Fighter between him and Paulo Costa? Or from what you've heard, is it more likely that we see Israel fighting Costa on, say, Fight Island sooner than later?
Look, nothing's come over my desk in regards to Paulo Costa and Israel Adesanya fighting. So I've had nothing about that, and I've also had nothing about the nothing in regard to the Ultimate Fighter. So I don't know, for the Ultimate Fighter to happen, a lot more would have to be done. Like, I would have to the decision for me would be a business decision. Like, how much would that help Israel make money? And if it added greatly to his back end, to his pay-per-view, then that might be worth giving it a go. Even though the stories that we have from the Ultimate Fighter and stuff is that it's quite a hard it's a hard time. It's quite a hard time. It's not the most enjoyable time, but if it makes dollars, it makes sense, right? These guys these guys got to scrap for every dollar they can. So that's what I'd base my decision on if it came down to it. But it's not a discussion point at the moment, because it needs to come over my desk, and nothing's come over my desk in regard to that.
Yeah, because a lot of people are saying, well, in some ways it doesn't really make that much sense, because we know yourself and Israel, you guys have plans of staying active. So this would delay the fight. This would possibly mean one less fight for Israel in 2020. And then there's also the fact that the cameras would capture a lot of the city kickboxing secrets, and the tactical stuff that you guys do as well would just be right out there. I mean, you'd have to be a big part of that season yourself. I mean, how would you feel about being on TV and so much of the stuff that you guys do that's sort of kept up under secret, or a lot of the strategies that you've employed in the game just sort of being out there, and released into the public like that?
I haven't really thought about it, but and I also, I've jokingly already told the guys that I'm not going to be a part of that Ultimate Fighter. They can take. We've actually jokingly already put together a team that if it ever happened.
Who's on the team? Who's on the team?
Well,
head coach Dan Hooker.
Who would accompany Israel would be a whole lot of people in similar vein to the coach that was in the co-main event to us in the weekend. We'd put a whole lot of our girls.
Mike Perry's girlfriend. The city kickboxing girls are going to be the coaches on TUF.
Would find some of them and would send them with Israel and would give them a shot. Why not? It worked. Like at the moment, like I I point to that evidence on the weekend that it's a successful formula.
Yeah.
I would take Mike Perry's formula, transplant it into the Ultimate Fighter, and that would be Israel's coaching team. Why not? It works.
Yeah. In the words of Jesse Pinkman, yes, science. You can't disprove it.
Cannot argue at the moment.
One more thing on Israel, and then obviously we're going to talk about Volko because we don't want to chew up your whole day, Huge. I mean, I know you said it hasn't crossed your desk or anything, but is there any idea when this Costa-Israel fight could happen? I know the UFC started booking fights a while ago, and people thought, all right, we must be nearing it. And there's been no announcements, no nothing. People are thinking, is there a delay in negotiations? What's exactly going on?
Yeah, I mean, we're good to go. We're just waiting on them.
Mm-hmm.
September's good for us. Yeah, if the UFC want to put the fight on, then we'll fight it. Yeah, let's push for September. That'll give us enough time to get ready. A lot of the other noise to do with coronavirus and stuff would have calmed down. Let's do it in September. Send the contract over, and we'll get it done.
Tell you what, September's going to be a big month for MMA if things go to plan. Now, let's talk about Alex Volkanovski. He's taken up Max Holloway, obviously, in the rematch in just a couple of weeks. And a lot of people really impressed with Alex when he won the title, obviously, against Max and was able to dominate the way that he did. What do you expect to be different about this rematch? Obviously, Max has been studying him very, very closely, and what went wrong against him in that first fight?
Yeah, I think, what the big thing is with this fight is the unexpected leaves you a little bit antsy because we know that Max is going to has to make some adjustments. In the first fight, we had, I had a massive library of information. I had a massive library of data to work off that I knew there were certain things that Max was going to do. In this fight, we know that he's going to change some stuff. And for the most part, it's hard for us to figure out what that's going to be. Like, there's no data on it, like there was for the first fight. So there's going to have to be like some adaptation, like on the fly. We're just going to have to see what happens. But the other question is, if Max tries to change too much, because there's such a thing as trying to change too much in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. People talk about Max has to find a way to mitigate the leg kick, the leg kicking that we did, which stifled a lot of his game. So, people were saying that he's going to have to check those kicks and stuff. But to check those kicks is, like the way that he stands and stuff, that he stood like that for a decade. And now, let me check my calendar on my watch, but now he's had you're going to change a decade's worth of work in a few months. That can possibly take away from your game if you're going to do that. And what's going to happen in the heat of the moment? Like, you might be able to maintain that for the first round, but what's going to happen in round 2, 3, 4, and 5? You're going to revert back to what you've been doing for the last decade. So I'm interested to see what the changes are. And I'm interested to see if those changes are going to take away from what he's been successful doing for the last decade. So smart coaches, they don't change that much because, especially in a shorter period of time like they have, like Max, I just know from experience to change some of the things that they want to try and take away from Alex, it takes years. It takes years of ingraining that. And I don't know Max. Max could be a super athlete that could learn at a different rate to everybody else. But for me, that's the interesting part. What changes are they going to make that aren't necessarily, that they're going to be able to learn in a short amount of period of time since the first fight, that won't take away from Max's game. I'm interested to see.
I think that's fascinating. I think you kind of encapsulated, the very X factor of this fight, the adjustments, because we know what Volko does, but it's all about can Max deal with it differently this time around. And I'm wondering because, in the first one, you guys wanted to leave no doubt as to who won, and you guys successfully accomplished that. So what are you guys hoping to show in this one, in the rematch?
Look, we our strategy is going to change a bit for the second fight. It has to. We can't, we have an obligation to change a few things because he's seen what we did the first fight. But we're changing strategy. We're not adding. We don't have to change the way that Alex. We don't have to change anything fundamentally with Alex. What they've got to do is change some of the fundamental things that Max does. That's going to take years. If they do try and change it, then all power to them, but that's going to work to our advantage. What we're tweaking is just strategy. We don't have to change, we don't have to change the way he stands. We don't have to change the way he steps over. We don't have to change certain moves. We just have to adapt it slightly differently, so that it's not so predictable. I think we've got it. I think, from a coaching point of view, I think we've got a much easier job than what they have to do. But I actually have studied their corner a lot. I have a lot of respect for their corner. They're actually very good, very underrated. Probably because they don't have a long list of fighters. I think they just have Max and a few others. But they're very they're one of the better corners strategically in the game. And they're smart, so I think they'll understand that, and they'll be on the same line of thinking as me. It'll be a strategic change. It won't be like trying to fundamentally change Max and what he does. I think it'll be more strategy. So we're gonna go head to head there in terms of that.
Well, we can't wait to see what happens, Eugene. And of course, you guys won't find Eugene on social media, but make sure to follow City Kickboxing on Instagram and Facebook at City Kickboxing. I see they forced you to do a few videos recently, so it looks like you're coming around a little bit to the social media. And of course, Alex Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 2 goes down at UFC 251 at Fight Island on July 11th. 12 for all the Aussies and Kiwis. And I kind of find it fascinating, Eugene, because usually you're back in the gym and you've got 3,000 fights to focus on and no sleep, and then here you are in a hotel in Vegas, forced to take a vacation. I'm guessing a lot of the team is loving that fact, so make sure to make the most of it until the next one.
I only just got up. It's 3 in the afternoon.
What a good life. What a good life. Yeah. No spider drills for the boys back in New Zealand while Eugene's away. Appreciate your time, Euge. Really, really appreciate it. And stay safe out there, man.
Thank you, guys. Another awesome one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.